We have also engaged Melissa Mitchell at the DNR to kind of see what DNR or what the Rice Creek Watershed District can offer for an application for the CRS program. If you're more interested in learning about that as well and getting very serious about entering the community rating system, go ahead and reach out to me. As you can see, my number's on the screen here. I will also leave my email in the comments for any other questions or anything. So
yeah.
If you have any other questions, let me know.
Yeah. Marcus, thank you very much. I would ask that you make the connection with SEAL, and those links that were in our presentation, we'll make those available to the group if anyone's looking for those. And again, Rice Creek isn't the applicant to the program, but rather the community. And with all this modeling that the district has and the other ways we've reached out, we have a good deal of information that likely supports the community's application and gets them to move up in rank quite quickly would be our hope. We certainly have other materials available on education and maps and such that are a good resource for each of us. Next slide, please.
Nick, if this is Beth, I can jump in. We have, as you said, we have started recording. We traditionally don't record our city county partner meetings, but so I apologize. We'll have that portion of it. We will also have this as a PDF, and we can provide the links then when we're sharing all that information. So
very good, thank you. All right, on to the next subject matter, our regulatory update. Here I'd like to introduce Patrick Hughes from our office. He is the permit coordinator and wetland specialist. Patrick?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, like Nick just said, I'm Patrick Hughes, permit coordinator and wetland specialist with the district. And the next portion of the presentation here is to provide an update on the state of the regulatory program. So listed here are the topics that I'll cover over the next few slides. First is the input process. As mentioned earlier in the presentation by Kyle, the district recently adopted the 2020 Watershed Management Plan. During that process, we received a number of comments related to rulemaking. So I'll touch on the different avenues that we have to provide input on the district rules and process. Second, the district is in the early stages of a rule revision, and I'll cover the key topics that are being considered. And finally, I will share the tentative timeline for the rule revision process and adoption. Perfect. So the district is continually working to improve the regulatory process and ultimately be efficient, effective, and consistent in our administration. This includes providing opportunity for our partners to comment and give input on potential rule improvements. There are a number of ways to provide input as shown here. So that would be sharing suggestions directly with Rice Creek staff, discussing at partner meetings like today. I will provide an opportunity for that later if you have some questions or comments you'd like to provide. Also through the formal public comment period of the rule revision process and through public hearings, which would also be a part of that rule revision process. So the feedback from the Watershed Management Plan process, the district did receive 40 comments relating to Rice Creek rules and the permitting program. There were similarities and overlapping of some comments, but on the other hand, we also did have some comments that opposed others. So upon review of those comments, the common themes we found were to reduce the overlap and or provide better alignment with requirements of city, state, federal, and adjacent WMOs, to provide additional flexibility with water quality and rate control rules, but also conversely to provide tighter restrictions in water quality rules. So there are a few takeaways from that WMP process. Most importantly, we want to stress that all partner input is valued and will be considered. Many of the comments that were made during the Watershed Management Plan process are more appropriately suited for the regulatory rule revision process. And I just want to point out that those comments that were made will be considered as we draft the updated rule. Additionally here, so some modifications to the rule will be directly related to comments that we have received and will potentially receive. But unfortunately, the district will not be able to fulfill every request. Part of this will be due to contradicting comments, but also due to obligations that the district must meet, such as the MS4. Also worth noting that additionally, the district will consider modifications to our administration process following the adoption of the revised rules. For example, at least one city has brought up outstanding permits that resulted in volume bank credits. Our board of managers have discussed this so far, and staff will be in communication with those cities that are affected. In addition, we're also looking at potential updates to our website and considering permit submittal requirements, moving to more electronic submittals and the like. So over the next two slides here, this is a brief overview of the key items that are being considered for the proposed rule revision. I'll briefly kind of discuss each proposed change, but I won't read every cell here of the table. For the two columns on the right side of the table, it's just important to note that the district won't be proposing a rule change that has a negative impact on the resource. And the purpose or reason for many of these changes are to address common issues and complexities in the rule, and that ultimately might reduce the amount of variance applications that are submitted. So kind of running through the table here, Rule F for wetland alteration, we're looking to modify the buffer requirements of the CWPMPs to consider site-specific conditions and provide flexibility in meeting the 25-foot minimum, 50-foot average of distance requirements and vegetative quality requirements as well. For Rule E with floodplain alteration, considering increasing that one-time fill exemption from 10 cubic yards to 100 cubic yards. This does kind of come off as a large change, but our analysis to this point has shown that this would have no measurable effect on regional flooding. And the last one on this slide is for drainage systems in Rule I. We are proposing to limit the rule to only include public drainage systems as defined by 103E. That would be quite a clarification change. We would also add some clarity for the submittal requirements for dewatering and temporary crossings, and to define the required easement and right-of-way of the 103E systems. And the second part of the table here, Rule G relates pretty closely with Rule I. So this would be redefined to include culverts, bridges, storm sewers, and ditches conveying greater than 200 acres. Once again, that's further clarification on what systems we are regulating, and in this case, non-103E. And then the last two here are both related to Rule C for stormwater management. The first one would be that the water quality treatment standard for public linear projects would be revised from 0.75 inches over new impervious to 1 inch over new impervious surface. This would be to align with the current proposed MS4 permit requirement. And the second piece here would be to clarify the existing definition of single-family residential, and that might also include a cap in the amount of allowed impervious surface before you kind of have to have more of the Rule C requirements for treatment and rate control. And then I guess just something not shown here in the table, but I'd just also like to mention that on top of these key proposed rule revisions, there would likely be a number of administrative considerations, smaller items to the rule that might include clarification on the Atlas 14 requirements, clarification on vertical datum in the civil plans, and just general formatting, spelling, other minor corrections. And here we have the tentative timeline for that current proposed rule revision. The draft rule language would be completed by the July board workshop. The comment period would follow soon thereafter from August into October, with a public hearing most likely sometime in September. District staff, Houston Engineering, and our legal counsel, we digest those comments for the Board of Managers to review and consider at the November workshop, with an ultimate vote on the resolution of the final rule at the November board meeting. The updated rule would take effect then on January 1st, 2021. This would be consistent with our last rule revision process, where the rule was implemented also on January 1st, but in 2017. And I'd like to clarify that this timeline is tentative and would allow for some flexibility in these dates. If some of the parts of the process take longer than others, the board could still vote in December or consider comments in December, I suppose, as well, to still meet that January 1st, 2021 goal. No, I just threw a lot at you at a very short amount of time there. But at this time, I guess we'd like to ask if anyone has suggestions for rule changes that were not previously suggested through that watershed management plan input process. You can feel free to speak now, through the meeting here, or utilize the chat box. But if you're more comfortable, you can always provide comment later, like I kind of mentioned earlier, in an email or otherwise, that works. But we just want to make sure that any input from our partners is shared and considered as we move forward here.
Patrick?
Yeah.
We didn't have any comments on the rules come in through the chat.
Okay.
And hearing no comments from anyone, I think we are able to move on to the project and program updates.
Perfect. Great. I will just, once again say that there'll be plenty of other opportunity to provide comment as everyone wants to. So at this time, I guess we'll move back to Kyle for the next piece of the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Again, at this time, we're just going to talk about a few ongoing project updates and program updates that are going on this year at the Watershed District. I'll start off with a project that I'm working on, and then we'll pass off to Nick, who will talk about our repair on JD3, and Matt Koshin will join us, talk about some work on Lower Creek, and I believe Beth had some updates as well. The topic you see on the screen there. Go to the next slide. Project that I've been working on for the last couple of years, and we are actually to a point where we will implement this project in 2020. We're very excited about a new iron enhanced sand filter at near Bald Eagle Lake, Ramsey County Ditch 11, which is a small drainage system that we manage that drains into the southeastern portion of Bald Eagle Lake. It also serves as the ultimate channel that receives outflow from White Bear Lake when it is flowing out. The ditch system itself isn't the legal outlet of White Bear Lake, but it flow from White Bear Lake that leaves through the county park does ultimately discharge into Ramsey County Ditch 11. So for the last year or so now, it's been flowing at a pretty good clip, and a lot of water down to Bald Eagle Lake. It's a unique project for us in that this area of Ditch 11 really has no other regional stormwater management or treatment to speak of. It's our first project in this area. It kind of came out of one of our sub-watershed assessments that we completed working with the Ramsey Conservation District, or formerly known as the Ramsey Conservation District, a couple of years back. And this was, I believe, the second highest rated project in that assessment. We were fortunate to receive a $392,000 Bowser grant through the Clean Water Fund to aid in the implementation of this project. It'll be constructed beginning, we're hoping in early July we'll break ground and have it wrapped up by the end of September. We can move to the next slide if you would, Beth. I'll show you a little bit more of what this site's going to look like. So as noted on the previous slide, there's passive treatment and active treatment here. Again, ditch 11, there's really no, it's just a, open channel ditch. There's really no regional treatment. So part of this project is to construct a new stormwater pond in line with the ditch channel to serve as a sediment sink, sediment collection area for most of the upper watershed of this drainage ditch, which does incorporate runoff from a large portion of the downtown White Bear Lake commercial area and Highway 61 that drains north into the ditch. So we're excited about that. That alone will improve water quality for Bald Eagle Lake. But we had this property here that fortunately Ramsey County Ditch 11 runs through that is owned by White Bear Township. It was undeveloped, had been set aside, for future stormwater work by the township years ago. And it really blossomed into a great partnership with the township. And they were willing to allow us to utilize this property for at least the next 25 years. And so we'll be also, in addition to that pond, installing another pump-operated iron-enhanced sand filter, similar to systems we have previously built at Hanson Park in New Britain and at Oasis Park in Roseville. Although this one's more along the scale of what was built at Oasis, smaller than the one in Hanson. But it's, again, in addition to that passive treatment year-round, and that new pond will operate the pump system probably from April through October, thereabouts, pulling water from the ditch up into the elevated filter beds where it will be treated for sediment and phosphorus, and then the drain tiles will take that runoff that filters through the beds and discharge back to the ditch itself. Every one of these we've built has a new kind of a new twist on it. This site is actually within the emergency response zone for one of White Bear Township's drinking water wells. One of the groundwater wells is nearby. So we wanted to make sure we weren't encouraging any additional infiltration in this area of stormwater. So the filter beds themselves will be polylined so that all of the stormwater that is brought up and filtered we ensure that it goes back to the ditch and back to Bald Eagle Lake. It'll just be clean when it gets there. So I'm very excited about this project. Again, continuing our work on the iron enhanced sand filters and refining their design with everyone that we move forward. With that, I think we'll pass it back over to Nick. I think he's next to talk about GD3.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Yes, Anoka, Washington, Judicial Ditch 3. That is a district project to repair the system itself, basically the clearing of channels. You can see in the photos at the bottom there what we typically see on these systems that haven't had recent maintenance. It involves a good deal of tree clearing to gain access to the location of the ditch, and then an excavation of the sediment and materials in the ditch, vegetation. And we side cast it from there along the banks of the district's right-of-way, the public drainage system right-of-way. JD3, as we call it, you can see in red there on the map. The main trunk runs for the portions that we're doing the work on east of 35E, and then it curls down to the south. And branch 3 is the portion that runs up to the north. It's impressive in length for the district as well as cost. It's the largest project the district's had to date, coming in at $1.2 million of an estimated total, 7.5 miles of ditch work there as well. Next slide, please. So certainly all the benefiting property owners who participated in the petitioning to have this ditch established back in the day benefit from its full function, as well as City of Hugo. It is a sole outlet for the City of Hugo, providing predictable drainage into the future. It's hopeful that the project will begin here, likely mid-June of 2020, and we will be at that work likely for an entire year, moving into 2021. So this is part of the overall effort of the district and the Board of Managers' wishes, and that's captured in our watershed management plan, that the public drainage systems are our focus. We need to provide a systematic approach in providing a predictable outlet for many of these communities, long-term drainage, flood control, and all the things that go with that. With that, I will, the photos in the bottom there, you can see some of what the work typically looks like. And I will turn it over to Matt now to discuss another project.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So I'm Matt Koshin with Rice Creek Watershed District. I run our water monitoring program at Rice Creek and also serve as a project manager on projects like the Lower Rice Creek Stabilization Project. So this project is underway right now. It's actually out for construction bidding. We expect construction to begin later this summer and go through the start of winter at least. We're fortunate to be working with two great partners in Anoka County Parks in the city of Fridley. Also fortunate to receive a Clean Water Fund grant to cover most of this project. And the Watershed District is paying the remainder of it. Total project cost just a little over $700,000. Next slide, please, Beth. So the impetus for this project is a sediment problem. I guess first off, I should note on the map there, you can see where Lower Rice Creek is. So this is the last segment of Rice Creek before it enters the Mississippi River. So this is downstream of Long Lake, going through the cities of New Brighton and Fridley, and going through Lock Lake. And what you see there is a picture of Lock Lake and some sediment that is accumulating in the upstream basin or the upstream part of Lock Lake. So the impetus again for the project is a sediment problem in Lower Rice Creek, and that led us to do some investigatory work. Beth, next slide, please. So we did a very detailed survey of Lower Rice Creek, one to confirm or to investigate what we suspected that part of the sediment project or part of the sediment problem was due to eroding banks. So part of the outcome of this detailed survey was to confirm that eroding banks were a problem, and you can see by the photos here that they definitely are. But the detailed survey was to inspect these stream banks to gather data to analyze the magnitude of the problem, how much sediment is coming from them, and also to prioritize potential work. So if we were going to do stabilization work in Lower Rice Creek, where would we focus our efforts to get the most bang for the buck? Next slide, please. So some analysis that was done by Houston Engineering, our district engineer, confirmed that indeed stream bank and bluff sources are a major contributor of sediment in Lower Rice Creek and in Lock Lake. So we suspected that that was the issue, but the data that we collected in the survey of Lower Rice Creek confirmed that. So that's telling us, again, that we should be focusing our efforts on stabilizing those eroding stream banks. Next slide, please. So here's a map showing all of the banks that we surveyed in all of Lower Rice Creek. So on the right-hand side, we see where Rice Creek exits Long Lake in New Brighton, flows to the west. And on the left side of your screen, we see it entering Lock Lake. So we surveyed all of these stream banks in Lower Rice Creek and used a tool called the BHI, the Bank Erosion Hazard Index, to gauge whether or not the erosion hazard was anywhere from low to very high. This allowed us to prioritize our efforts on the segment that's shown in red right there. Most of the stream banks in that area have moderate to very high erosion potential. So that is the project area. If we go to the next slide, we'll see kind of a zoomed in map showing the project area. So this is between Highway 65 and 47 in the city of Fridley. It is adjacent the Fridley Civic Campus, the new property that is there. And we're fortunate that all of these parcels are owned either by the city of Fridley or Anoka County Parks. And so that is the project area. The project is only on public land. Next slide, please. And this, I think, will just be a couple of examples of designs. So this is a high energy portion of Rice Creek. There's higher slopes in this part of Rice Creek. The water's moving faster. There's a lot of energy being expended on the stream banks, leading to this erosion. but that amount of energy requires, in many cases, rock to stabilize those stream banks. So many of the sites are going to be receiving some type of riprap, at least on the toe of the bank, to stabilize them. There'll also be some plantings incorporated with that to try and stabilize above, from bankful and above. Also be some regrading. Then in the next slide, we'll see an example of a tow wood bench. So these will be installed in several areas as well. This is where we construct a bench that's made out of a tow wood or a log, essentially. And then there's like a mini floodplain bench that's constructed on top of that with vegetation. This helps reduce some of the energy of the stream as it's flowing through the vegetation, because that's increasing the roughness. It also creates a small bench for sediment and nutrients to be deposited and then taken up by that vegetation. So just a couple of examples of the designs that are going to be incorporated in the project. I think I have one more slide on this, or is that the last slide on Lower Rice Creek? Okay, that's the last slide on Lower Rice Creek, thanks. So then I'll transition a little bit and talk about state of the lakes. So I mentioned that we do monitoring at Rice Creek. We have data on most of the lakes in our watershed. We've had a lot of questions in recent years from partners about impairments and whether or not lakes are listed as impaired, whether or not they're meeting state standards. Might they be delisted as we start to meet those state standards and do restoration projects? This is a good time for these questions because the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is actually revisiting this major watershed this year in 2020 to review data and make new assessments as to whether or not water bodies are meeting state standards. So the Pollution Control Agency is the agency that makes that final call, whether or not a water body is meeting state standards, whether it might be a new listing or a delisting if we're seeing progress being made. So based on our review of the data that we have, there's 3 lakes, Bald Eagle, Golden, and Silver Lake, have the potential to be delisted. Again, the Pollution Control Agency staff are going to be going through these data this year and make that determination. But here's a graph as an example of Golden Lake on the right, showing data going all the way back to 1976. And then the state standards, which determine impairment, go across. So blue bars being phosphorus, green bars being chlorophyll A. We've seen a significant improvement in terms of declining phosphorus concentrations and declining chlorophyll A concentrations. So Golden Lake has seen some great projects go on the ground with our partners at the City of Circle Pines. Rice Creek has worked on some projects with the City of Blaine also. So we've seen some nice improvements there, and Golden Lake is a candidate to be delisted. Next slide. So we talk about listings and whether or not a lake is impaired, but more broadly, when we look at all of the lakes in our watershed and we have this monitoring program where we go out and collect data and we look at water quality trends, what is the condition of the water body, are things getting better or worse? So for the most part, many of the lakes in the district are either holding steady, that is not getting worse, or improving. And I think we have somewhere between 7 and 9 lakes that have a statistically significant improving water quality trend, like Golden Lake, the last example. There are others. So, lots of questions about impairment, whether or not we're meeting state standards. That's a good barometer, long term. And of course, there's regulatory and other factors, I guess, related to impairment that are important to consider, but also good for us to consider kind of the long-term trends here. Are things getting better or worse? Are we making progress? Are things getting better from year to year? And so we have all of these data, just like on the last lake on Golden Lake. We have graphs like that and data for many of the lakes in the watershed. And of course, happy to share that with any of our partners. If there are questions about the trends, are things getting better or worse? Why? We're happy to discuss that at any time with any of the partners. I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. This is Beth. My name is Beth Carreño. I am with the Rice Creek Watershed District. And I just wanted to share a few other updates that are going on at the district right now. For a suite of trainings, professional development opportunities, and workshops. These are both for our public partners, city staff, parks department, road crews, as well as, sorry about that, as well as programs that we offer to private providers, and then residents and individuals. This year, we've moved our programs online and are using web-based programs for the workshops. And you'll see that we have a turf maintenance workshop coming up in July. We're offering that with Fortin Consulting and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and the City of Hugo was partnering with us to offer that. We have 2 winter salting workshops coming up in August. August 11th will be for sidewalks and parking lots, and August 20th will be for roads. And again, all 3 of those are for providers, whether they are city, county, park staff, or private contractors as well. Also on June 12th, we are offering one of the Blue Thumb workshops from their programs. It's a Lawns to Legumes and Resilient Lawns workshops for individuals. You can register for the Lawns to Legumes program at bluethumb.org for that Resilient Lawns workshop. For the Fortin workshops, please contact us. They are developing an online registration right now and hope to have it done by the end of the week. In the meantime, if you're interested or want us to share information with you or any private contractors in your area, please let us know, and we're happy to help coordinate that for you. The last other updates we have, we are seeing a lot of success with the Adopt Drain program in the entire metro area. There's been a lot of interest in it in the Rice Creek Watershed District. Rice Creek not implementing, we are not managing the implementation across the Watershed District, but we are assisting any communities that are wanting to kind of increase the awareness around this program. Any resident within the metro area can participate in the Adopt a Drain program. And so one of the things that we're able to do is to provide some promotional materials, some outreach, some different, anything from utility inserts, flyers, press releases, for those communities that really want to increase their engagement in this. We've also worked with a number of scout groups and other volunteer groups who are doing storm drain stenciling. And then we're providing additional materials for them to canvass those neighborhoods and let people know that they can clean or can adopt their storm drains. Why would people adopt storm drains? It's kind of that first line of defense of keeping things out of those storm drains, and that's a direct way to our water. So we are able to keep a lot of sediment and other pollutants out of our waterways when we engage in some citizen volunteering and citizen science for adopting those storm drains. Rice Creek is able to quantify that as well for any of our communities and tell you the number of people that are adopting storm drains in the area, as well as the amounts of pollutants that they are diverting that they report. It is a self-reporting program. So if you're interested, please let me know. We also were successful this year in getting a Green Corps member assigned to Rice Creek Watershed District. We're very excited about this. We've never had a Green Corps member at the district before. This Green Corps member will be kind of bridging our regulatory and permitting department with our outreach program, and are going to be really focusing in on our BMPs, stormwater ponds, rain gardens, green infrastructure, helping with both an inventory and making sure that our information is all accurate, but then developing toolkits and resources for individuals that have those BMPs on their properties, making sure that they are maintaining them properly and getting the resources that can assist them with that. This will benefit individuals that are individuals and organizations that are permit holders, as well as those that have put in voluntary BMPs. So more on that as it kind of develops. We are currently recruiting for our Citizen Advisory Committee. We have openings in all 3 counties. I've spoken with many of you and shared information, and I thank all of you for your assistance in finding interested and engaged citizens who are interested in water resources in the water district and are considering becoming a member of that CAC. The CAC plays an important role in providing recommendations to our board on everything from cost share and other projects. So, and then finally, we will be doing, it's likely that we will be doing the Master Water Stewards program again next year. I've worked with many of you on that in the past, and we really like to find volunteers that are not just interested in the Master Water Stewards program at the watershed district level, but really how we can partner with our communities and using those engaged and educated water volunteers to both kind of coordinate outreach in the communities, but also lead some really great capstone projects and water quality projects. We're excited with projects that have been done in the past, and you know, they've all had that element of community participation in it. So if you're interested in having a water volunteer in your community and are interested in learning more about the Master Water Stewards program, please let me know, and we'll get some more information for you. With that, I will hand it back over to Nick to wrap things up.
Well, thank you, Beth. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We certainly appreciate your partnership. This is a final opportunity within our program here. If you have something you'd like to share or discuss as a group here, you're welcome to use the chat or open it up to a discussion. The Rice Creek Board of Managers, as well as all of the staff here at Rice Creek, certainly value the input that you provide and the partnerships that we've developed together in accomplishing our mutual goals and the district's mission. We're specifically interested in trends or concerns that you're seeing within your community that we could partner on. Things that you would like to see in a future city-county partner meeting. Like I said, we've been doing this for the past 5 years or so. We're looking forward to do another city-county partner meeting in the fall of the year. We like to have 2 in a year. And then certainly any remaining questions that you have, again, we can do that now if there's questions. And beyond that, I see that Rebecca has chimed in thanking us for our partnership. We appreciate that. Thank you, Rebecca. And if not now, pick up the phone, give us a call, shoot us an email. All of those things work to do that. Jay Riggs, thank you. I think that's it, unless someone else comes online with a question.
With that, I will stop the screen sharing, and if people would like, they can turn their cameras on and see one another as we start to open it up one last time. Any questions or comments, or just a howdy do? All right.
Okay.
Well, if that's it, then we will go ahead and shut this down. Again, we did begin recording it. We've got minutes. We'll make the PDF available to everyone. And those links from FEMA or from the DNR as well. And we'll get those out as soon as we can. I see a question.
Yep.
Has there been any updates on communities with credits and debits?
Yes, Beth, there has been. Madison, yes, thank you for the question. The district's board has heard the question and raised the concern and discussed it to some degree. We are examining the materials with Houston Engineering, the permits that relate to those debits, and we will be constructing a communication out to those communities so that they can engage the district on a resolution there. So it's not a definitive at this point, but to move it forward. Patrick, I see you're on the screen there. Did I miss anything? I think that captures the extent of it. But there will be direct communications out to those communities.
Yep, I think that's consistent with what I'd say.
Okay.
And Madison said, thank you for addressing that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're welcome. I see that Jim's comment there, that he appreciates the support of the watershed district and their local projects and their stormwater education program. You got to read those when you get a friendly thumbs up there.
All right.
Well, I think that's it. So
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
I know.